Hi, so for those of you who don't know me, my name is Mateo Chavez Lewis, and welcome back to Music Theater Theory. Whoa! Today, on the request of my new friend Hannah, we are analyzing Jeremy Jordan. So, Jeremy Jordan, for those of you who don't know, is a Broadway star. He famously played Jamie Wellerstein in the movie version of The Last 5 Years opposite Anna Kendrick. He also was Jack Kelly, the lead in Newsies, originally on Broadway, and he was also in Bonnie and Clyde, which is kind of a cult classic musical by Frank Wildhorn. So what I want to look at is one of his cabaret performances where he performed Sondheim's Losing My Mind from the musical Follies. Now, I haven't actually seen this performance. It's one of a few kind of cabaret style performances that Jeremy Jordan has that have kind of gone semi-viral on the YouTubes, including like he did Celine Dion, It's All Coming Back to Me Now, which is also a great performance, and She Used to Be Mine from Waitress. I have seen both of those videos. I have not seen this one, so that's why this is the one that I'm choosing to react to. So it's going to be totally cold, totally fresh off the cuff. Is there anything else I want to say before we dive in? I don't think there is. Let's do it. Ta-da! There he is. There's our boy. He's a fellow short king. Jeremy Jordan. I think he's like 5'7" or something. I'm 5'6". So I feel I feel a kinship with him for that reason. So already you can see, like, performance-wise, he's so grounded, right? Excuse me, Mr. Ad. So, performance-wise, he starts off from such a grounded place and a focused place, and a lot of beginner performers will start off, like, with this face of, like, okay, I have to get ready to sing now. But it's so important to take those few first bars of music, to spend that time to really ground yourself in the moment. Take that breath in. Did you see that? So that you can start, the sun comes up, in a totally focused place. And that draws the audience in right away, because there's a mantra that I love that applies to acting, which is, if you are interested, you will be interesting. So as long as you're focused and you are really paying attention to whatever the image you have that you're singing about, or whatever the focus of your song is, the audience is going to be interested as well. And I think this clip shows that right off the bat.
I think about you, the coffee cup. I think about you.
So he's very much singing in like a pop style. What he's not doing is like, the sun comes up, I think about you, with these like long vowels, warm tone, vibrato. He's adding these like vocal fries. This sound, that sound is often used in pop music. And it's something that kind of naturally works its way into the voice when the voice is strained. But you can also add it in intentionally as a bit of an effect if you're trying to mimic like a Billie Eilish style pop sound, so that I think about you. And then the other thing he's doing, so he's doing the fries, and then he's also doing scoops, where the pitch moves up and then kind of lands at the pitch. Instead of going, the coffee cup, and landing right on the pitch, cup, he goes, the coffee cup. If I really exaggerated it, it would sound like the coffee cup, right? It starts lower and then it scoops into it. That's also just a very relaxed pop/jazz style affectation. So you can tell he's singing it in the context of a cabaret and not in the context of a classical, traditional musical.
I want you so, it's like I'm losing my mind.
Cool. So he's singing this in E major. So that E is not super high for a tenor, but it is kind of breaky. And it's a note that I struggle a lot with getting it soft. And do you see how much control he has there? I want you so. Like, I don't have nearly as much control over that because that's right kind of where the break sits for a tenor. So it's really impressive. Even though it sounds super easy, it's actually way harder than it looks to sing that note with that amount of precision and control, and to sing it quietly.
The morning is.
There's that scoop again. Yes.
I talk to friends.
There's the fry again. I talk to
Think
friends.
about you. And do they know it's like I'm losing my mind?
And there was the fry again. Instead of losing, it was losing. Just all of these little pop jazz inflections.
The thought of you stays bright.
So that's interesting because bright. It's all the way down on a low C sharp. And that's one of the most interesting parts of the song compositionally. We have the word is bright, but the singer drops to this really low note, and traditionally we would associate brightness with high singing. You know, this sounds bright, right? And this sounds dark, for example. Right? But in this song, the thought of you stays bright. The note bright drops a full octave. The thought of you stays bright. And so what I've heard a lot of singers do is kind of try to vocally brighten that note up. The thought of you stays bright. Like putting it in the mask, making it nasal, and that makes the tone sound bright, even though the pitch is going down. What Jeremy Jordan is doing here, though, is leaning into the fact that Sondheim put this massive octave jump there for a reason, probably, and Jeremy Jordan is really leaning into that choice that Sondheim made. Okay, Sondheim's gonna write a really low note here. I'm gonna really darken my tone. Even though the word is bright, I'm gonna play against that and give you something you wouldn't expect. The thought of you stays bright. Like he's going very dark on that vowel.
Sometimes I stand in the middle of the floor.
Stand. There's that scoop again.
Going left, not going right. I dim the lights and think about you. Spend sleepless nights to think about you. You said you loved me.
Cool. So before, the first two times he's gone up to that high E, and do they know? He sung it quietly, but in like a chest voice or in like a quiet mixy chest area. So he hasn't flipped into a full falsetto. So for example, a chest voice would sound like, but do they know? And a head voice would sound like, but do they know? Like much more airier. Much more airier. There you go. That's Mateo Chavez Lewis Grammar 101. But here, you said you would expect him to use the same kind of tone, which is a quiet chest voice. So not a lot of air, still a focus sound, but a quiet sound. But do they know? You would expect him to do that again. You said you loved me. Because he's kind of set up that expectation. But he changes it on you, right? Like, that's I love that in music. I think music affects us when we have an expectation of what we're going to hear, and then we're surprised. That's when we're the most affected. So when we expect him to go to this already pretty quiet place, but a quiet place with a lot of tone to it. You said you loved me. And then he goes to this really airy falsetto place. You said you loved me. It's just so much more vulnerable and heartbreaking than we even expect it to be. And I don't know about you, but my heart broke a little bit in that moment.
Or were you just being kind? Or am I losing my mind?
Ooh. And there, that was such an airy falsetto that it almost like cracked and wavered at the end, like it was an imperfect sound, which is really powerful. Like when you have the bravery as a singer to make a sound that isn't perfect. Did you hear at that end that little waver? There was like a little tiny waver like that. It wasn't just mind until the end. There was a little moment where the sound cut out. Like he was almost going too breathy and too quiet to even sustain the sound, and that made it feel very vulnerable. So it was a choice, right? I'm sure if he wanted to sing that with a pure tone, he could have. He's Jeremy frickin' Jordan. He has no shortage of vocal technique, but he chose to go really, really quiet, soft, vulnerable with it, and I think that was a really effective choice.
I want you so, it's like I'm losing my mind.
Whoa!
Does no one know? It's like I'm losing my mind. All afternoon doing.
Cool. All right, let's look at what just happened. So we've got, it goes from this quiet place where it's been for the first half. We've kind of heard the whole song form, AABA. I've talked a lot on the channel about what AABA song form is. So you can check out one of my other videos if you want to learn more about that. So we've heard the whole AABA form. Now we're moving into this kind of variation section where we take the melodic and harmonic material that we've already heard, and we're gonna change it all around. So that's mostly on the onus of the arranger, whoever arranged this performance, probably whoever's at the piano. I'm trying to see if it says in the. No, I don't think it says in the description of the video who the arranger is, but. This is probably whoever was arranging the tune for this performance was probably the one who made these decisions. And maybe Jeremy helped out, and maybe it was a collaborative effort. But you've got, it goes from this really soft place, my mind, right, really vulnerable, and then we switch to I want you so, full chest. So we go from quiet, really vulnerable to full chest on the same note within the span of like 10 seconds. And then he holds it crescendo, crescendo, crescendo. And it's one note. And it's not even that high of a note, but the sound just blossoms. Listen to this again. Super vulnerable. Hear that waver at the end?
I want you so.
Oh, the other thing too is he's not going, I want you so. He's not doing an open classical vowel. He's not, I want you so. He's giving us, I want you so, which is really like pressed into the hard palate. Like the sound is kind of, instead of reverberating in the back here, I want you so. We're getting it up front. I want you so. It's like an electric guitar or a chainsaw almost. This that kind of sound. And it's a buzz like right at the back of the teeth. I want you so. And that is very kind of country. And Jeremy Jordan sings with a lot of like country influence a lot of the time. Like you can hear that in the way that he uses vocal cry sounds. Like we've talked about Leah Michelle using them. Jeremy Jordan uses them in a bit of a different way that's a little bit more country and a little bit more intentional for the most part. And then it's also the scoops that we were talking about before, also very country, and this sound, this because it's the same kind of sound as like a southern accent that you would often hear in country music. So it's a super country sound that he's using here, which is weird, but it's very Jeremy Jordan and it's great. It feels true to who he is, and so I don't know, it feels truthful to me, even though it's not what you would really expect for this kind of a song. That also is a country note. My mind. That he didn't go. What he didn't do was, it's like I'm losing my mind. Right? It wasn't that. It had that spice to it. My mind. And then here, like, look how wide his mouth is and how expanded his jaw and throat are. Ma, like we're getting ma, a super like wide and also I think a very country vowel. It's not my mind, right? It's my mind. But then he releases from the back of the throat, and he's able to, even though it's a kind of a bitten down wide vowel, he's able to release it from like the back of the throat and the tongue and everything to give us that vibrato, mind, which is Jeremy Jordan's like #1 best thing that he can do. Like he's so great at doing that with the closed tight vowel released from the throat and the tongue, so we get vibrato on it.
Does no one know? It's like I'm
no, there it is again. It's not no, it's no.
All afternoon doing every little chore. The thought of you stays bright.
There he went again, even darker. Thought of you stays bright.
Sometimes I stand in the middle.
There's the cry. Did you see that? Sometimes I stand. Very country, because it's cry, scoop, and buzz, right? It's not stand, like it's stand, and then you add the cry, the stand, and then it's not stand, it's stand, it's wow. So the pitch goes, the cry goes, everything goes. It's very country.
Not going left, not going right. I dim the lights and think about you. Spend sleepless nights to think about you. You said you loved me.
Nice.
Or were you just being kind?
Cool. Okay. So this is also speaks to what I was saying about surprises being so effective. You said you loved me, or were you... What did he do? He went up instead, but he connected the loved me. Jeez. Oh, I need some water. You said you loved me, or were you just being kind? So first of all, he changed the melody to make it higher. It should be, love me, or were you just being kind? Right? That's what it is initially. So he changes the melody to keep up on that high G. And then instead of loved me, or were you just being kind, it's loved me, or were you just. He connected the breath through. Did you see that? Like he didn't take a breath. So he surprised us vocally by giving us way more there than we expected, which is interesting because the last big vocal surprise was he gave us less. Remember, we expected the you said you loved me, but he went, you said you loved me, and he gave us way less than we expected to hear. Now we're getting we expect to hear, you said you loved me, or were you just being kind? But instead we get, you said you loved me, or were you just being kind? And we get these like riffs on the notes and everything too. So he's giving us more than we expect, which is like the opposite surprise, which makes it twice as surprising. It's awesome.
Or am I losing my mind?
Whoa. Gravel. Did you hear that? Like, or am I losing my... Like, so vocally fried. But there's still a lot of air moving through that sound, too. Did you hear that? Like, when I just demonstrated, there wasn't, like, any air moving through here. But he does it in such a way that it's like, or am I losing Like there's still air moving through the fry sound. So it's probably not bad for his voice to do. And it might even just be coming out naturally because his voice is kind of tired, and it might not even be an intentional choice. But if it's not an intentional choice, what is a choice is to not actively stop it. Do you know what I mean? I feel like a singer sometimes when we think, oh, my nose is plugged, I'm going to sound nasal. Or, my voice is tired, I'm going to sound raspy. A lot of the time, our impulse as singers is to try to avoid making that sound and to try to focus really, really hard on not sounding raspy. And what happens then is we tense up, and obviously we know that tensing up in singing is like no bueno, does not lead to good things happening. So it's really nice that if it isn't intentional to make that kind of a fry sound, that he's allowing himself to do it anyways, because that's what his voice is doing right now. And it sounds way better to allow a little bit of that fry to creep in than it would sound for him to try really, really hard to avoid it and tighten his vowels, tighten his whole apparatus, and like maybe waver on pitch or something. Like it sounds a lot better for him to just allow his voice to be totally relaxed, send air through it, and let it make the sound it's gonna make. That's how singing works. Oh, and what a beautiful way to end, too. Like, just a nice light hum, which is very in the style of like this country influence, but like cabaret, piano, acoustic influence. So it's a very unique performance of the song. Jeremy Jordan's voice sounds great. And yeah, there you go. That's kind of my reaction to it. I hope you liked it. Let me know what you want me to analyze next. Once again, my name is Mateo Chavez Lewis, and this has been Music Theater Theory. Whoa! Now I'm gonna go get myself that water.